As developers, we read code more than we write it. When adding new features or fixing bugs, we first need to understand existing code so we can make the right changes in the right place. When reading code inside the IDE, IntelliJ IDEA helps us to read and understand code by providing helpful features like syntax highlighting and inlay hints. But there are more features to help us understand a piece of code. We don't read code like we do text, from start to finish. Code doesn't run linearly. We scan code to get a feel for the shape and to find the part we're interested in. IntelliJ IDEA will take care of formatting the code while we're writing code. If we encounter code that is not properly formatted, we can have IntelliJ IDEA reformat the code for us. We can restructure the code by moving code blocks around to match our mental model, preferred style, or coding conventions. There are several ways to get a quick overview of a piece of code. For example, we can collapse the code so we only see the names of methods and not their implementation. This can help us find the specific code we're looking for more quickly. We can then expand that particular section. Note that we can still search the code when it's collapsed, and if needed, the relevant section will expand. Alternatively, we can look at the file structure for a file using Command F12 on macOS or Control F12 on Windows and Linux. We can navigate to the section of the code we're interested in from here. We can get the same information by opening the Structure tool window using Command 7 on macOS or Alt and 7 on Windows and Linux. We can search the code for specific names of variables, methods, or strings. For example, a log message. IntelliJ IDEA will highlight the results of your search in the file. We can also search for other occurrences from the editor. For example, we can select this variable name and press Command F on macOS or Control F on Windows and Linux to search for the selected string. IntelliJ IDEA will place the selected string into the search field and highlight all occurrences in the file. We can also ask for additional hints from our IDE. For example, we might want more information about a particular class or method that is used here but defined elsewhere. We can navigate to other locations in the codebase and back again, but we might end up getting lost in a large codebase. Even though we can ask IntelliJ IDEA to locate a file in the project structure, jumping around too much can get overwhelming. Instead, we can use quick documentation, F1 on macOS or Control and Q on Windows and Linux, to pull up the information we need in our current location. We can also pull up type information using Ctrl-Shift-P if we're unsure of what type is returned by a particular method. Code might contain comments that explain the code. We can toggle to reader mode in the editor using Ctrl-Option-Q on macOS or Ctrl-Alt-Q on Windows and Linux. Right-click the icon in the gutter to select Render all doc comments if you want all comments to show in reader mode. To understand intended behavior of the code, we can look at the tests. To look at the code and its tests side by side, right-click the tab and select Split and Move Right. We can run a test through the debugger to actually see how the code is executed. First, we need to place a breakpoint at the location in the code we're interested in. Use Command F8 on macOS or Control F8 on Windows and Linux to toggle the breakpoint. Next, we run our test using the debug option. Execution will stop at the breakpoint so we can investigate the state of our application. We can see the current values of variables and objects. We can evaluate an expression to see its current value and look at more details. We can even change the expression to evaluate different results. We can continue execution by either stepping into a method to see what happens inside a called method, or stepping over a line to go to the next line even if a method is called, depending on what we're interested in. Finally, we can resume the program to finish execution of the test. If there is no test that exercises the piece of code you're interested in, you might want to add one. This can also help you verify any assumptions you might have about the code. While trying to understand the code, you may want to perform small refactorings, like renaming a variable or method, extracting a method and giving it a meaningful name, or refactor the code to a style you're more familiar with to make it easier for you to read and understand the code. Playing with the code can help you verify your assumptions and improve your understanding. Remember, though, that these changes are not meant to be committed. Revert them when you're done. We might be interested in when the code was last changed and why. We can find out by looking at the history in our version control system. If we're using Git, we can click the gutter to enable Annotate with Git Blame. Or, if you don't like using the mouse, you can open the VCS pop-up using Option V on macOS or Alt and backtick on Windows and Linux, and enable or disable this option from there. In the gutter, we can now see when a line was last changed and by whom. We can hover over this information to see the commit this change was a part of and its corresponding commit message. Or we can click the line in the gutter to open the Git tool window with the selected commit highlighted. Here, we can see the commit, its commit message, and which files were changed. We can open the diff of the files to see exactly what was changed where. If you are using JetBrains AI Assistant, you can ask AI Assistant to explain the commit to you. JetBrains AI Assistant is an additional service available in IntelliJ IDEA from version 2023.3. It has several features that can help us understand our code. For example, we can ask AI Assistant to explain code, write documentation, or generate unit tests. If we use the action Explain Code without selecting any code, we see the entire file is selected and AI Assistant opens a chat where it will explain the code in this file. Alternatively, we can select a specific piece of code, like a method, and perform the same action to get an explanation of that section of code. We can write documentation for a class or method. Note that our cursor needs to be on the class or method for this to work. We can't write documentation for a blank line. And of course, we can ask AI Assistant questions in the chat. For example, to explain the project. Keep in mind that even if you use AI Assistant to write code for you, you'll still need to be able to read code. You'll need to evaluate the code provided and understand whether that is the code you want. In this screencast, we've looked at many ways IntelliJ IDEA can help you read and understand code. Thanks for watching.